Hey, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I know how precious your time is, and I know if you're on the Zoom meeting that you already are very involved in doing what you can to help reelect President Trump and Mike Rogers and everybody else down the ticket. And so I just want to say it's not just words. I'm extremely grateful for all of you taking time out of your very busy lives. Tonight, I am very fortunate to be on our boat in the middle of a pretty much empty marina because hardly anybody sits on their boat on a Tuesday night. But we just welcomed our new grandchild. He's 3 weeks old. And so I'm trying to spend as much time in Grand Haven with my daughter as I can. I am really excited tonight. We are going to get right to it because I don't want to waste anybody's time. I do have weird internet. So if for some reason at the end you lose me and I'm not here, we are going to do follow-up questions. So if you have questions of anything you hear, put them in the chat. And Shane, who I am so grateful for, Shane Trejo with Delegates for Trump, for hosting the Zoom meeting. He will get to your question at the end and make sure that it's answered. And if anybody needs to wrap up the meeting and for some reason I'm not here, 11th Congressional District Chair Bill Rowerdink is on this call. So Shane, at the end, if Michonne's not here, unmute Bill Rowerdink and let him wrap things up from the Michigan Conservative Coalition. But we're going to get right to it with Luke Malice, who I have gotten to know so well, one of the hardest working people in all of Michigan. And I'm so grateful for his efforts. He's going to explain the efforts for here in Michigan. And then also really excited because I'm a huge fan of Tyler Bowyer, who's with us. I got to hear Tyler at the Turning Point Conference in Detroit. Gosh, I think that's already been a month ago. He's fantastic. And we share a lot in common of unfortunate things. And we have 62 days to win. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tyler and Luke and let them take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michonne. I appreciate it. And I don't know if Luke wanted to jump on here, but I'll kick over to Luke. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about today about the things that are available to get involved and to let people know because we're in crunch time now and basically the final 60 days before ballots can be officially turned in from an early standpoint before we focus on the original election day on November 5th. But wanted to kind of jump into many of the things that Turning Point Action is undertaking, some of the partners that you're probably aware of, but you don't necessarily know that we're working together with to help coordinate and make sure that we deliver a victory, not just for Michigan, but for the rest of the states. And then kind of happy to take some questions, I think, here at the end, if we have some time that allows. So as Michonne said, we are victims of unfortunate circumstance where Arizona is kind of similar to Michigan, where I'm from, where the left has taken a fascination with our states basically since 2016. And as you all know, the left has a difficult pathway to win the presidency without Michigan. The same could be said about Arizona for Republicans and for the president long term. Statistically speaking, that it just becomes very, very difficult for us to win without having Arizona in our column. And so, as we look at all the key target states that we're working in, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and so on, and Georgia, these are the most critical states because they're the most likely to go back and forth. So Turning Point Action, we started looking at this. A lot of people don't realize this, but this is actually our first election putting any boots on the ground full time for election related purposes. A lot of people are like, no, you guys have been doing this for a long time. No, actually, this is the first election ever that we've gone out, raised the money, and raised the capital to put full time people on the ground. And our focus has been predominantly Arizona and Wisconsin. We're based out of Arizona. Like I said, we kind of view Arizona as that important state that we have to win in order to make sure that we can win all different opportunities here for the president. But we've started looking at, we've gone into Wisconsin, funding as much as we possibly can from outside sources to Michigan, to Nevada, and so on. So as we've gone about this work, this is our first election cycle putting boots on the ground. We realized very quickly that there just have not been enough tools that have been out there in order to aid the work that has been going on. And I don't think I can share my screen. I think it's disabled. Otherwise, I would. So if that becomes enabled, I'll be happy to share my screen here.
Yeah, Shane can handle that.
Shane, if you don't mind, it's a little bit easier to visually see some of these things. But I wanted to take you through a few of them and explain the thinking and how this works. So we started developing tools just a few years ago, about 2.5 years ago, because we realized horrifically that doing the work that the left has been doing, predominantly in Michigan, believe it or not, it's we just the our side just didn't even have the tools and resources to be able to enact it, to be able to do it. And so, as many of you know, because you've seen it happening around you for now the past 4 or 5 election cycles, in Michigan, the left is obsessed with Michigan because they learned very rapidly in 2016 that without Michigan, it becomes really hard for them to win the presidency. So, because of that, they've had a series of organizations that have invested tens of millions of dollars each election cycle in distributing funds in order to hire thousands of full-time ballot chasers. And this is part of the infrastructure the left had built back in the Obama era, which started in Colorado and has now spread across the country in what they call community organizing. And their community organizers are full-time people who look like regular people, but they have been turning every basic function of society into a more progressive version of it. This is the reason why our school districts feel like they're becoming progressive hellholes. This is why simple things like block parties all of a sudden are curated towards trans policies and weird stuff that's happening at very local levels, because they have a full-time person that's paid full-time, a full-time teacher's equivalent salary, to be in that neighborhood in order to enact these types of behaviors. And so a lot of questions are the most basic question. This is what we train all of our people to that we're hiring full time is, well, Tyler, how are they doing this? Well, they're finding a person from the neighborhood, and then they're not focusing on you or me. They're not focusing on likely Republicans to turn them out to show up for the block party and to show up for the fall festival and to show up for the HOA meeting and to show up for the library board meeting and things like that. They're turning out their low propensity Democrat voters. And so what they're looking at for Democrats is they're looking at a very simple thing, which is, what is the number one thing that's going to move that person to vote? What is that single issue that moves that person to vote? And in most cases, the number one single issue for Democrats happens to be abortion. And so that's the reason why we've seen over the last 2 election cycles in particular, abortion being used as a massive football to move those individuals. So, get back on track here. We started looking at how the left has operated this and made voter contacts in the rapid way that they make them. And we realized really quickly that the tools that the Republican Party had been using just weren't cutting it. They just weren't enough. And so we embarked on this voyage here, saying, hey, look, if we're going to put potentially thousands and thousands of volunteers and full-time people out into the field to help chase ballots, we need to have at least some of the elements that the left has built. And so I'm a former county chair. I was county chairman of Maricopa County. Oh gosh, what is it? 10 years ago. And so I was in my mid 20s. The average precinct committeeman, which is like a precinct delegate that I had in Maricopa County, was 71. And, I was a 25, 26-year-old, running this thing. And I was horrified to find out that the Republican Party basically had no tools to aid precinct committeemen, precinct delegates to, actually further the work to make actual voter contacts. And, not only was this horrifying to me, but I started thinking, okay, well, if I was going to do this and make this as easy as possible for my 71-year-old precinct committeeman, or the college kids that I had been working with, at ASU and Arizona State University and other places, how would we go about that? And so we actually had framed out. I started framing out, what that would look like, what would make it easiest. and I had, subsequently knocked, tens of thousands of doors to help some of our candidates that were in Maricopa County. But, learned a thing or two along the way, as I'm sure many of you have learned what works at a door and what doesn't work at a door, what works on the phone and what doesn't work on the phone. So our work at Turning Point Action has been modeled after this. So we're doing a couple of different things, and I'll share these with you kind of in order of, I'll start with our full-time efforts that we're doing and how we've modeled them, and then I'll work our way down to what we're doing from a volunteerism standpoint and how hopefully it can structurally help the individuals that you're out organizing in Michigan. So I'm going to share my screen real quick with you here. One second. Okay. So you should be, is everybody able to see my screen okay? It's just the Turning Point
Yep.
Action. Okay. So I'm going to take you first to our ballot chasing initiative, which is, you can find just at tpaction.com/chase. And it's Chase the Vote. It's called Chase the Vote. We have, what we've done is we've gone through, and as Michonne mentioned, in Detroit, we covered this extensively. We had a number of county chairs out in Las Vegas this last year, where we went through this. Effectively, what we've done at Turning Point Action is we've gone through each individual state, including Michigan, and we've stack ranked all of the precincts and wards in order, top to bottom, of what we like to call a super chase precinct. So what we've done is we've gone through, identified what are the precincts, what are the wards that have the most people that we need to chase. And we actually stole this right from the left. So the left in Michigan, that operates out of Michigan, has entire guidebooks that we were handed. And we read through all of them and studied them extensively. And basically what these guidebooks said and what the left had done is they had operated where Democrats are the most abundant, but they are not always the most ready to turn out. They're not the highest propensity. And the reason why they've done this is because, and this is straight from their textbook, which is, it's easier to convert somebody to vote who agrees with you but is just lazy or gets busy or is distracted, rather than trying to convert someone over who is what we call a swing voter or even an independent that votes all the time, because that person usually comes to the table with their own ideas. And so the left is really focused on turning out independents who are already along in their boat, but they don't focus on people who have already basically made up their mind. They make up those votes with people who are less likely to vote. And so that's what our Chase the Vote initiative is based off of. We actually have, if you go to tpaction.com/chase, you can see here, we have full-time positions. We're actually operating in Michigan, hiring for positions that are available in Congressional District 7, Slatkins District, where we're trying to flip that because that's the most likely, most flippable district for Republicans because it just barely leans right. Our job when we're doing this is we're doing something that's a little bit different in ballot chasing. Our ballot chasing is we're trying to put bodies out into the field full time to identify voters who are those less likely Republican voters, but that agree with us. So we're trying to find that sweet spot of voters who are with us, but they don't always vote for whatever reason. And usually the first question that people ask is, well, who is that voter, Tyler? And there's a lot of different reasons why some people don't vote. The most frequent, I'll tell you, in the biggest percentage that I'll tell you of one of the biggest reasons why people don't vote is you just got to think about how many bad days you have in a month. This is why we always ask our classes when we go through ballot chase training, how many bad days do you have in a month? Most people say, I don't know, like two or three bad days in a month. Well, if you don't really believe in voting that much and you wake up on election day and it's a bad day, is there a good chance that you're not going to vote? Mm-hmm. The answer is yes. There's a good chance you're not going to vote. And so just right off the bat, 15% of America isn't voting because they woke up on the wrong side of the bed on election day.
That's crazy.
And so that's for us is like where it's like, well, what do you need to solve that problem? Well, you need full-time people that are out there helping guide those people to the ballot box. The second thing that we have that we're talking about most frequently right now is at tpaction.com/100. This is our Commit 100 program, and we're actually taking people. So, and I'll get into the application with this right now. You can go up to the top here and see it, download our application. If you've downloaded the Turning Point application, you'll notice it looks very similar to another application that's out there that you may be familiar with, which is Scott Pressler's early vote action application. That's because we developed it and gave it to him. But this is an application that's extraordinarily powerful. We'll get into it in just a second. But our Commit 100 program is the program where if you sign up, we basically created a pathway for people to submit their first and last name, committing to vote to chase 100 ballots. We then at Turning Point Action give them 100 voters through our application to help us chase. And so we have already signed up close to 5,000 people to help us with that. That's a commitment of over 500,000 votes that are predominantly in Arizona, Wisconsin, and now we're opening that up to Michigan and Georgia and Nevada as well. But those are, that's not a small number by any means. If we even get 10% of that, that's about 10 times the amount of votes that, Donald Trump won or lost, our states by in the last two election cycles.
No, that's a stunning number. Fantastic.
So that's the second. So then I'll take you to the application. So, and then I'll just kind of walk you through the application just real quickly of what we've done here and some of the features. If you haven't downloaded Turning Point Action application, I really encourage you to do so. I always joke that we've tested this thing. It takes a minute just to kind of get used to, but we tested this thing by, giving some of our oldest activists a few glasses of wine, spun them around 3 times, and then put them on the application, and they could still do it. And so it's been through that testing, those trials. But you go in, you click this arrow that's in the top left-hand corner on the application, and what it's going to do is it's going to open up and ask you for your name and phone number. Once you enter that, it's going to open up a series of tools here that are built. And I just want to explain just a couple of the tools that are really helpful, because I had just about had it, because the Republican Party I didn't feel like had done enough to make this accessible and easy. Basically, what we've done is we've created a automated door knocking application. And what I mean by that is you don't have to wait for someone to upload data to you. You don't have to wait around. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to get a username and all of that. You come in, put in your information. We verify you against the voter database, and then it makes it accessible to you. And this first tile, it says help knock doors. What it does is it allows you to go in, and immediately it pulls up. Let me see if I can pull up a map here. I might pull up a different screen here for you in just a second. You click on help knock doors. You can click a green button on there that says voters near me, and it automatically pulls the 15 closest low propensity Republicans to wherever you're standing in that moment. And that could be in Alaska. It could be in East Lansing. It could be anywhere in between. And literally, you can immediately, with no excuses, go start contacting those voters. Now, it's preset to low propensity Republicans because, again, just like the Democrats have done, our focus is at Turning Point Action, turning out those people who are Republicans but less likely to vote for whatever reason. And so we not only can you do this with knocking doors, if you scroll over in this section right here to making phone calls, sending text messages, postcards, writing postcards, it pre-fills all the information for you, so you can immediately begin contacting people in a rapid pace. And again, if you click voters near me, which is a big green button, it will give you whoever's closest to you geographically in that moment. So again, you're not waiting around. So why is this important for you? Because the biggest holdup is every October before the election, we have a flood of activists who show up who just want to help us knock 10 or 15 doors or 20 or 50 doors. And what happens inevitably every election? We're waiting around assigning them lists, Or worse, lists get assigned to people and they never knock them. So do you know what happens in those scenarios? People get assigned names that are really important for us to contact, and then those activists who say I want to get involved, right? Then they wait around for 2 days or 3 days or sometimes longer to get assigned a list, and then they forget, right? Or they get busy, and then all those voters that were assigned to them get pulled out of the universe, and they never get reassigned. And so we shoot ourselves in the foot literally every election cycle by incidentally assigning people late lists, and then they never get actually contacted, or they go into a black hole somewhere where those people never get contacted. So we think we've solved that problem with this, is that you can go in immediately, start contacting the people closest to you, by the way, which is most important anyways, because doesn't it make more sense for you to talk to the people who live closest to you, that you may already know? We have many people we've taken through training that go on here and they click on it and they're like, oh my gosh, my brother's on here, that lives next door. Great. We need your help to go chase your brother down and make sure he votes this year. Uh,
Right.
or their spouse, or, even sometimes themselves, because everybody falls prey to not always voting for whatever reason. So this is part of the work that we're doing that I think is very helpful, that could be very beneficial for you all, which is going in and saying, hey, look, this tool exists. So it may not be what your plan is, but this is a really great backup plan and a really great easy way to pull people together. Last thing I'll share, and then I'll kind of open it up and we can talk more, and I'll let Sean kind of lead us here. So our Super Chase events that Luke is leading across the state. So if you go to tpaction.com// super chase, you're going to be seeing a lot of text messages, a lot of invitations for these. These are our events that we're doing all across the state, where we're doing door knocking events. And they're really starting this month when early ballots have dropped, towards the end of this month, where we're going through, and anyone that shows up to our events, we then get them on the application, and then all they have to do is go out in the middle of the neighborhood and press the green button, voters near me, and they can go start chasing ballots. And so we have kind of perfected this. We have done, if you've never been to a Turning Point Action Super Chase or Super Saturday event before, we're calling them Super Chase events because it's not just going to be on Saturdays. It's going to be every day or nearly every day. Obviously, we're going to start on Saturdays, but as we get closer to Election Day, we're talking about doing these events every day. Luke and the entire team that we have that manages volunteers in Michigan has been organizing our coalitions across the state. And our coalition leaders aren't just coalitions to do, nice, feel good events to talk about, the Latino vote or the mom vote, but to actually organize and chase ballots, during the election season. And so they're busy organizing these events. So some of these events that we're doing, as you can see here, they're already planned. If you come here and go under Michigan, you can see all the events that will be planned all throughout the months of September and October. You're going to be seeing a lot more that show up. So let's go to next month here. I don't think any are up yet for October, but very soon will be. You can come in, click on one of those events. You can share the graphic real easily if there's a graphic that's there, and then also share the event itself, and then RSVP. So let me see here. I think I just, so if you come in, RSVP right here, you can take a look at it just real easily. Just say you're going to be there. And then our goal is, if we can have, 50 plus people at each of these events, we're going to be chasing, potentially hundreds of ballots each time that we do a Super Chase event. So, and we do that, times, 50 or 100, you're talking about major election shifting activity. And this is the only way that we're able to do this, is because we built the application that allows us to just congregate a bunch of people together at one time, and everybody can go out and knock together. Last thing I'll say this, some people have asked, this is like Trump Force 47. Some of the Trump Force 47 work that they're doing is mimicking a lot of our focus. We kind of led the pack by telling the GOP and the RNC, hey, we should be focused on low propensity voters for a lot of different reasons. And so they've, God bless the Trump campaign. We're working together with them where, the Trump campaign actually is able to work with outside groups now because in April, the Federal Elections Commission uh, gave a new uh, ruling that exists, and that changed everything about how they can work with outside groups, uh,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. We're doing things a little bit differently from Trump Force 47, mainly because 2 years ago there wasn't a application that would just easily upload data. There's some concern still with some of those things that are out there, and again, this isn't a knock on what the campaign's using or campaign psychic or anything like that. We just wanted to make sure. And again, I don't want to, I don't want to say that it was exclusively our work that did this, but I think there was enough complaints from enough different angles that it forced some things to happen that maybe wouldn't have happened. That sped up how they're developing technology and the way that they're going about their processes. And so,
Tyler, I love the way you say things.
even though, and again, that's good. It's good pressure to be putting on the campaign, good pressure to put on the RNC. But I'm not sure if we would have ever got here with Trump Force 47 without kind of developing some of these critiques and these alternatives. And so we're doing things a little bit differently, mainly because, again, I'm not a spring chicken, and I know how tough it is in October when everybody shows up to get involved. And I think you still have the problem with uploading lists and the automation of that, and to make sure we're just doing it a little bit differently, where it's easy and preloaded and
Yeah.
simple. But this is an alternative. What we're telling people is, if you're getting involved with Trump Force 47, that's wonderful. Do that, and you're in good shape with the voters that they're assigning you. They're totally different universes. We're focused on the lowest of low propensity voters, and in certain specific areas. Trump Force 47 is way more, is working with way more volunteers in Michigan than we are. And so what they're doing, their targeting is great as well. But more is more in this case. We're not in a position in the Republican Party where we're over contacting people and over chasing ballots. So
Amen.
we
Yeah.
have a responsibility to aid. I think the way that we're going about it, and some of the automated features that we've created are a little bit easier to use for a person that's not as involved. I'll put it that way, and just as simple as that. But some people also prefer, because they've been on Campaign Sidekick for years, that to use Campaign Sidekick, and that's great too. And there's a couple other tools that are also out there. Numinar has a solution, a couple others. Whatever gets the job done, just get the job done. But a rising tide raises all ships. We need more in Michigan. We need more in Wisconsin. We need more in Arizona. And so we don't really see it as competitive as much as we see it as just like, well, there's many different ways to skin a cat here, and there's a lot of different solutions.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely, Tyler. I'm so glad you brought that up because I'm helping the Trump campaign. I love Turning Point. The you know the there's a PAC, Elon's PAC is in Michigan now, and a few other states. The truth is we just have to remember we're all fighting for the same goal. All and some people are inspired and reach out to Turning Point for whatever reason. That technology and your app, it completely appeals to them and they just respond to it, and that's a great thing. And some people got in with Trump 47, and that's great too. I don't think it matters. With 62 days left, we just need to pick a lane and hit the accelerator. So that's why we wanted you guys on here in Michigan, so for people who are interested in Turning Point, just to go with it. So, Luke, do you want to start addressing? I know you're seeing some of the questions and you know some of these people personally.
Yeah. Tyler, thanks for being on here. Really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy. And Michonne, thank you for having us on here. Really appreciate that. But I was just kind of looking at some of these comments on here, and like I think TD Wall, you'd mentioned, is there a place for downloading it on the Android App Store? Yes, you can just search TP Action app, and that'll be right there on the Android and Apple Store. If you have any issues whatsoever with technology stuff, I put my phone number towards the top of this as well. If you don't, for some reason, have my phone number already, it's in that chat. Just go ahead and save it. Send me a message. Never bother. Go ahead and reach out to me anytime you need. Trying to see the chat kind of it went blank here for a second, so I can't really see where the other ones were. So, yeah, like Tyler had said, though, I know like earlier, I don't know why it's blank now, but you had mentioned in there one of the questions about Trump Force 47 and our efforts. We are doing a lot of the same stuff, but there's some certain things that we have on the app. Like the icons popping up, right, to be able to identify that a mail-in ballot is in someone's possession. I mean, that's a super big thing. If you're out there hitting doors and you pull up the TP Action app during it and you see, like I was just at a Trump Force 47 training tonight. They had me speak at it, and I went through our app as well. So we're working closely with them, and I really encourage people to pull that up so that way you can be like, oh, wow, away from me on this walk list. Like I know that this person has a mail-in ballot. I should go capitalize on that and go talk to them and utilize the script, or just go and help that individual vote based off of their values and compare the candidates, and then watch them put that thing in the mailbox respectfully, because that's how we're going to win. And other than that, I'm not sure, like I said, why it's blank now, my chat thing, so I can't see the other questions, but obviously, if you guys do have further questions, my number is in there, so never hesitate to reach out
I
to
think
me.
Shane has a few questions that he can read out to you guys.
Yeah, so
Happy to answer some questions too, and just kind of open. I don't know how much time you guys have
Okay.
here for that.
you'll probably go till about 8. So we've got a few questions. One is from Marie Marinelli. How often does voter data get uploaded daily? Is it from the city clerk as a source?
Yeah, so this is the biggest problem that exists within the conservative movement. So as most of you guys know, the left has totally subverted this entire process by creating organizations that collect the data and distribute it quickly. Our side has basically done little to nothing on that side. So there's only a couple different places that aggregate all of the data. So this is also a good reason to utilize both our what we're doing in our application, and also whatever the GOP is doing or the RNC. And by the way, we're sharing all of our data upwards with the Trump campaign. So we're all working together, but our source of data is from one company that most of the outside groups are using, that the RNC uses Data Trust. And so at times, and again, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but at times you'll have the data source that we work with update data more frequently. And then at times you'll have Data Trust update data more frequently. And so what we've been doing and working together with the GOP and with the Trump campaign is to make sure that we have as close to the newest and freshest data that's updated from the clerks as we possibly can. The ideal scenario is that this data is updated daily, and that's what it should be. But historically, that hasn't happened, both from the RNC and from others, which puts us at a severe disadvantage. So part of the reason why we've done what we've done, especially on the application front, is we're putting a ton of pressure on the data companies. We're putting a ton of pressure on the GOP to make sure that that data is updated on a daily basis. You should see my harassing emails to the data companies like literally every day is, why isn't the data updated? Why is it uploaded? Why is this county missing? Why is it, this is, we need hundreds of people saying that, like the left has. Our side, unfortunately, I can tell you as a former RNC member, as the national committeeman from the state of Arizona, is that we had a horrible situation happen at the RNC where there were some states that would go months without getting updated. So that's unacceptable. Of course, the data companies don't love guys like me who, call these people out. But, in order for us to win, we have to have daily updates on who's turned in an early ballot, for example.
Honestly, Tyler, thank God for you. And if there's anything at all that you could share about your efforts within the RNC, I know that wasn't really the subject of this call, but I mean, I'm personally very grateful for your efforts. I know that sometimes it's just like lighting a fire under, that changes things. And we appreciate all of your efforts. So anything you can share about that would make us feel better.
No, you hit it right on the head, Sean. It's literally just lighting fire under people's butts all the time, right? So it's just literally, I feel like a guy with a blowtorch, at times at some of these RNC meetings because I'm just going around basically just trying to get people to do stuff. It's like the meme that you've seen with the guy with the stick that's like, do something, you know. I, it goes from me being the guy that's like poking them and saying do something to running around with a blowtorch trying to get people to move. And again, there's some really great people who have done a lot of great things that aren't intentionally missing the mark in some cases, and then there's some people who are just lazy within the consultant class. And this is part of the reason why I always tell people, and you guys have a huge problem in Michigan, not dissimilar from what we had in Arizona about 10 years ago, where the consultants just rule everything. And when that happens, you have a lack of incentive to get anything done. And so the problem is like consultants don't care about daily data updates. They just don't, because if their paycheck cleared 2 weeks ago, and they know their next paycheck's going to clear two weeks from now, the election's over, and data never got updated.
Yep.
And so that is in its heart the problem that exists within the GOP nationwide. And then that's why consultants hate people like me, because as a person that runs an outside group, which is how the left figured out, oh my gosh, we need to stop paying these consultants millions of dollars. We need to just have 10 really effective organizations or 20 really effective organizations. And if you do that correctly, then all of a sudden you're winning.
And incredible, right?
Basically what's happened on the left in particular, and they've made Michigan their home for this.
Oh, okay. So I am thrilled to have join us TPX Turning Point Action, one of their ambassadors. And right now it says Michonne Maddock under her name because I shared my link with her, but it's Shemaine Nugent, who is so excited about getting on this call. Somehow she missed the invite. And I hope you guys don't mind. I'm going to interject because Shemaine is going to announce something that's really exciting. And we've got a good group of people on here. So welcome, Shemaine, not Michonne.
Well, thank you so much for the last minute invite. I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Michonne. And I actually am a Turning Point ambassador. And I just heard about this like literally 5 minutes ago. So I want to be of service to God, family, and country. And there's only one route for that. And that's with President Trump, with Turning Point, and making America not only great again, but healthy again. And I do have a great announcement. I am creating a forum where people, patriots, can come together with faith-based people, whether it's pastors or people who just want to experience more Bible study, or a forum where they can communicate with other like-minded Christian patriots, Christian conservatives, without the fear of censorship. So that is happening this coming Sunday. We get started, but there's going to be all kinds of things. And in the meantime, thank you so much, Michonne, for having me. And again, however I can be of service to all of you and to God, family, and country, put me to work.
Of course. Well, for starters, one of the things that we need to do, and I know Luke, I know Tyler probably won't be able to commit to this. We're so grateful for your time, but I feel like right now, with the amount of time we have left in the campaign, we should commit to a weekly meeting. And everybody on this call, so there's been up to 74 people on here. We need to bring 5 or 10 more people. The entire 11th congressional district, the entire 9th congressional district in Michigan. We need more people on this call. We have a Women for Trump event, 3 of them coming up. Shemaine's going to be working on one in Michigan. So if everybody could commit, you're already committing to Turning Point Action, bringing 100 ballots that you're going to follow through on, absentee ballots. Let's commit to bringing 10 more people to a Zoom meeting a week from now. And Shane, if you could get that together, we'll launch it as Women for Trump. We'll launch Shemaine's prayer action, and we'll bring Luke back on to talk about Turning Point. But I think right now we need to be every week growing our numbers.
Yeah, that's the plan, is to have one Zoom every week where people learn, very important action-oriented things that will help Trump win in November and help other conservative Republicans win. I'm going to get through a couple more questions from the chat. One is asking if someone asks, do we have a way to upload the city clerk's data if we obtain it into the app?
So the simple answer is yes, that's the future of where we want to be with everybody. The ideal scenario, and this is, I'll kind of just demonstrate just real quickly what the left has done. So left has created technology that it basically allows everybody to the local level to be able to do that. So they were able to aggregate data quickly in individual places. If there is something that is missing from a local area, we at Turning Point, we can always take it and upload it and be able to get it in there quickly. The What I can tell you is right now we're so focused on Michigan, you don't need to worry about that. The company that's the data company that is being used, again, there's only basically three sources of data for conservatives, and they're laser focused. And like I said, I'm just constantly whipping these guys to make sure that we have up-to-date information. But this is the biggest problem that exists, is that especially the blue counties, typically in cities, typically drag their feet, making it harder. The good news, I'll tell you, the good news is that if Republicans do their job, where we should be chasing ballots more often is redder areas anyways. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what the left has become really good at is aggregating all this data, but they're most focused on the bluer areas. So in Detroit, they're super focused, right? In the outer parts of the more suburban areas, they're less focused on that because, again, those aren't places that they're chasing ballots, but those are places that we are chasing. So those outer counties where we have more Republicans elected and more Republican pressure, there should be a concerted effort on our side with elected officials, particularly in elections officials, to make sure that that data is getting turned in quickly to the Republican Party. The same with Democrats are obsessed with this on their side. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the things I always tell people all the time is, guys, there's so many people that are what we call, our youths call black pilling. They're very depressed and negative on how things operate. Guys, they're spending literally tens of millions of dollars, close to $100 million on ballot chasing in your state. Wow. They're paying thousands of people. There's estimates of close to 5,000 near full-time employees of C4s and outside projects that they're paying to chase ballots, particularly in the last 3 weeks. They would not spend that kind of money if they could just flip switches, right? They would not spend that kind of money if it was just as easy as manipulating, Kava votes and everything else. And that's not to say they're not doing the cheap shots. They for sure will manipulate everything they possibly can. But they are spending so much money on this, guys, because that is the only way that they can assuredly win, is they have to do all of it. So on our side, if we just do a little bit of it, if we just do a little bit of ballot chasing, a little bit of get out the vote strategy, unlike we've never really done it before. I mean, guys, in 2016, Trump won most of these blue wall states just by chance. It wasn't because of like some massive strategy of get out the vote. The RNC basically did little to nothing. And I'm saying that as a former national committeeman here.
They did nothing.
There was nothing, and then they made Ronna the chair. And because it was just got lucky, right? And like that, it's like the silliest thing ever. If we just do a little bit, just a tiny little fraction of what they've done in a strategic and smart and an effective way, it makes it really hard. And so that's why they're freaking out. It's because they know that we figured this out. And that's why it's so plausible that Michigan is winnable, because if the polls are saying it's even within 2 or 3 points, then everything's winnable, because chasing 3% of the vote is totally plausible. It's only chasing 150 to 200,000 votes. It's totally possible with organization on the ground.
We're going to win everything. Shane, what other questions we have in the end?
Daniel said, if you call, there's no answer, is there a message that automatically goes to their voicemail?
No. So how the calling system works is so if you click make phone calls, it actually brings you over to the native application on your phone. So the reason for this is like the same button that I mentioned that says voters near me. It's pulling a list of people closest to you, and you're making calls from your native phone application. There's a couple of different things that benefit from this. Number one, it's your phone number. So of course we want people to be able to contact you back. So if you try calling this person's your neighbor. They live somewhat close to you. They're not like an alien on the other side of the planet here. This is somebody that lives in your neighborhood. The most organic way to handle this is you call them and say, hey, I'm your neighbor. I'm just reminding you to vote. Hey, I can help you vote. I'm a person that's in the neighborhood that can help you vote. If they don't pick up, leave them a message like a normal person. And then that's an opportunity. Well, you just called them. They're now in your phone book on your phone. You can now call that person. You can text that person back. You can follow up with them later. So the application is not devised like a voice over IP or a VoIP system where it's just like you're sitting there like a brainless person just like going through and making hundreds of unsuccessful phone calls in a row. Because the unfortunate part is when you sit in those phone banks, and again, not knocking anything, it's better than nothing, but it's really not any different than, when you have telemarketers call, because you're calling random people and what, like 1 out of 100 will pick up, and you're lucky if that person will have a phone conversation with you. It's way more effective if you spend just a few minutes a day trying to contact 5 or 10 people that live in your neighborhood with your own phone number, so then they know they can follow back up with you. And that's what we've done with the application.
Great. And is there a script for phone calls?
So on the application, it will pull up a script for you in the application. But our advice and how we train people is you don't need a script. In fact, you don't need to talk about anything other than just reminding people to vote. Remember, this is the base of people who are low propensity Republicans. So the data that we've isolated are people who are likely to already agree with us. They just, for whatever reason, forget to vote or haven't voted for whatever reason. And so it's usually less about, what we've noticed is less about policy. And this is what the Democrats have figured out, right? They'll find one single issue to talk about. Well, what's that one single issue for your community? Well, in my community, they started letting boys and girls locker rooms. That's a conversation that's 99% likely to be agreed upon when you talk with somebody about what's going on in the local community. That's just an example, but there's lots of other examples that may exist. It can be as stupid as, traffic light issues to all the way up to what I just talked about, which is, protecting, our daughters in bathrooms and public restrooms or locker rooms.
No, you're absolutely right. In my district, it's about cameras that were just put on traffic lights. So
Yeah,
it's
it can be as silly.
find a local issue and stick with it.
It can be as silly as tree trimming, for your neighborhood, to, things that matter. Like, I hate those red light cameras. I use that as the example all the time. Stuff like that, right? And so that's the reason why it matters to be able to contact the people who are closest to you. But when you go through on scripts, our advice is just say, hey, I'm your neighbor. I'm the local voting guru. I'm the person that can help you vote. And by the way, the number one thing that we've seen that works in talking with people and getting people to like open their eyes up is our neighborhood hasn't always had the best voting. So how can I help you vote? And they say, oh, well, and then they'll tell you what they care about, right? They'll say, oh, well, this is the reason why I haven't voted, or this is the issue that I have, or this is why I love Trump, or I hate Trump, or whatever, right? So that allows you to have a conversation. But what's most critical is just making that contact with somebody. Most people who aren't voting, they don't care that much. Unfortunately, we care. We would never trade our ballot in for anything. But these people might trade their ballot in for a stick of gum. And so it's better that you get to them first before the progressive left shows up at their door.
Okay, another question is just someone asked about, how does the app collect data from low propensity voters as you move through the lists?
Yeah, so there's surveys that show up on there that have the important information. We also our hope and our future is that we hope in Michigan we can put the equivalent of hundreds, if not thousands, of full-time people on the ground in future elections. We aren't doing that this election cycle because we don't have, I wish we had more resources at Turning Point Action to be able to do this, because we would. But we put dozens of people on the ground. Michigan needs somewhere in the ballpark of about 800 full-time ballot chasers, to get anywhere close to what the left has put on the ground. Those full-time people that we have in other places are collecting more particular information from their neighbors, from those low propensity voters. You have a survey that's on the phone, but what's most critical really is just making sure that they turn out to vote. Because if we can show that that person who doesn't always vote voted for whatever reason, there's usually other identifiers that come along with that help us to be able to figure out how to help them vote in the future. And so if it should, again, and this sounds silly and stupid, but if it's as simple as somebody reaching out to somebody, the most important data is not, did we try calling them from a telemarketing type way or hang a door hanger on their door, but that gives you no information. What gives you information is if I know, again, Shane contacted this person 3 times and he lives close to that person. Well, what can I do in the future election? I can go back to Shane and say, hey, Shane, can you talk to this neighbor again? Because it seemed like the last time you talked to him, that really worked, because he never voted before. And then after you talked to him, at least 2 or 3 times, then that person now all of a sudden voted. That's the best possible data that you can get, which was what we call relational data. So a lot of times we're so focused on, well, does this person care about Second Amendment rights? And does this person care about pro-life? And does this person, guess what? 85% of the conservative movement agrees on almost everything, all the basic stuff that you can ever ask at a door. So there's almost nothing that you can ask at a door that really differentiates a lot of people. Those people we would consider independents. The Democrats aren't even chasing those people. They don't even care about most of those people because they're too tough to chase. The people we want to chase are the people we already agree with that are just, for whatever reason, they're just too busy to vote, or they're sometimes too lazy, or they just don't see a value in it. And so relationally, the way that, if Shane reaches out, or Michonne reaches out, or Luke reaches out, the data that we can gather from who has the relationship with that person is almost more valuable than anything else that could exist.
Another question is, says that there's a lot of different factions in the GOP, a lot of Republicans who don't stand for anything. How can TPUSA kind of bridge the gap and give us something to unite around?
Yeah, I actually just called and yelled at a consultant today about this. So and they were telling me about how, Turning Point's too conservative, and we need to do a better job at leading everybody. And that's not how politics works. There's 100 different corners within the Republican Party, just like there's 100 different corners in the Democrat Party. A lot of people always talk about and complain about our 2-party system. We don't really have a 2-party system. We have a fractionalized multi-party system underneath each 2-party system that results in what we call primary elections. And we see that come out in our states that have later primaries, like you guys have and like we have in Arizona. And it divides us, or seemingly divides us. But it's really just, we have a lot of different parties within our own parties. We just don't call them parties. So the way that I always describe to people, I say, hey, it's everybody's responsibility. If you subscribe to this party, right? If you're from one of those 100 smaller factions that subscribes to the Republican Party, it's your job to get all your people out. So in Arizona, the former McCain people, we voted for John McCain for 30 years and, kept reelecting him. And there are a lot of conservatives, including, a lot of people I'm friends with, that didn't really love John McCain. But guess what? He won the primaries, and it is our responsibility to show up and vote. And it is our responsibility to make sure conservatives voted. And that is true still today. And so whether you're from the more establishment corner, whether you're from the more moderate corner, you're from the libertarian corner, you're from the constitutional conservative corner, it is all of our jobs to turn out all of our voters from those pockets in which you hail from, And so, or the Michigan rock corner, with the Nugent. So this is the everybody's responsibility is to turn out those people. And you can't take your ball and go home if you lose the primary, right? And I know there's a lot of people that aren't always in love with who wins the primary elections, including our Senate elections on either side. But it's our responsibility, if we ever want to win, to tell people, hey, you got to lift where you stand. And and that's the agreement that we all have, is moving forward, is that we'll help the other person get elected down the road. And by the way, throughout your state, you have some conservatives that win their primaries. You have some more moderates that win their primaries. Everybody's from a different corner that wins primaries in different parts of the state.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's a unifying thing to say, hey, I'm focused here at Turning Point. We're focused on low propensity Republicans. We're chasing Republicans, and we're hopefully going to turn out an extra, couple 100,000 people in our state.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? Because most of the people that are the ones that are pointing the fingers most of the time, it really should be, hey, what are you doing to turn out more votes?
Mm-hmm.
This is really the ideology that the left is focused on, which is they don't really care who you are. And this is like the best story. And I'll just, can I just take 2 seconds to tell us a real quick story, Michonne?
Yes, please.
But Jared Polis, who's now the governor of Colorado, even told this story and I think it's elongated outside of the book that was written. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, which is the Colorado Blueprint, or if you've ever read it. But this is what they said. They didn't care about who disagreed about what. They brought everybody together in a conference room, and you had the blue dog Democrats that were in there. You had the normal psycho baby killing Democrats. You had the pro-gun Democrats, the anti-gun Democrats, and none of them ever talked about that. They all came in, and what was the only thing they talked about around the conference table? How many votes are you going to get into the ballot box? That's all they talked about, right? So blue dog Democrats that were pro-life, they wouldn't talk about being pro-life. They would say, how many votes are the blue dog Democrats going to get into the ballot box to help us all out? And they would commit to a certain number. And then they would go to the normal Planned Parenthood guys. They'd say, how many votes are you going to get into the ballot box? And they would give you a number. And they never argued. They stopped arguing about that. They argued not about policy, but who could put more ballots in the ballot box. And guess what? All of them were able to incorporate what they wanted. They wanted to within the party, had their own little fiefdoms within the party in Colorado. And now they've done this everywhere, including Michigan.
Right. And we are constantly divisive and fighting against each other. And I honestly feel like this cycle more than ever that has been laid down. So I hope that that's true. Hey, Shane, will you unmute Shemaine really quick? Because she actually, talking about low propensity voters, the event that she has coming up in Michigan, I don't know if we have a date yet that we can announce, but it's really about the same thing with hunters. Shemaine, can you share about that?
I'll unmute Shemaine and got one more question for Tyler.
Okay.
Then we'll wrap up.
Go ahead, Shane.
Okay, so hunters, we're coming up on hunting season in Michigan, which is a big deal. It's $1 billion industry. 50% of hunters do not vote. You're talking about low propensity voters. Ted and I and Don Trump Jr. are involved in an organization called Hunter Nation, which is now aligning with NRA. And this is going to be a big deal. We're going to be announcing it coming up. But our goal is exactly what you're talking about, is to get those low propensity voters who have been apathetic and sitting on the sidelines, just, they're tired. They've worked hard all their lives. They just want to go hunting. And there's so many rules and regulations. We're fighting with the DNR, Michigan DNR, and also we live in Michigan and Texas Parks and Wildlife, that want to slaughter all of our white-tailed deer, want to slaughter all of our wild boar. So I think hunters especially are going to be the backbone and very helpful in garnering extra votes that we need. We've got to get them to get up off of the couch. Yes, hunting season's coming up, but I think we can do this. And with Ted's help, and hopefully my help, and Don Jr. and Hunter Nation and NRA, we can help that. And yeah, we've got a upcoming event that I can't wait to talk about with Michonne, and it's going to be so exciting. And so I'm so wonderfully blessed to have this opportunity to share the good news about, you know what? We've been sitting on the sidelines for far too long. We've let other people, let Gretchen Whitmer take the reins, and we know how that's going. We're done. We've had it. There's a new sheriff in town, and it's us.
Love it. Okay, Shane, last question.
Okay, final question for Tyler. Someone brought up Sidekick in the chat. When, the Sidekick has been notorious for, during their days of action, it will crash. You can't get to any doors. It'll be a disaster and everyone's pissed. They're blaming me because I'm the chairman. Like I had something to do with it. So this has been a thing for as long as I've been using the app. So how can we, what have you done with TP Action app to ensure reliability so that those sort of Sidekick-esque crashes won't happen?
Yeah, so no, that's a great question, Shane. And that is part of the reason why we developed what we developed, because we ran into the same problems in 2020 and 2022. Because again, we never put full-time bodies out, but we had just volunteers and we would have crashes and issues and all sorts of things. And so that's part of the reason we didn't want to invest the money into developing this whole thing. Quite frankly, if something worked, we would have used it. That was reliable. But again, that's not an attack on these guys. That's part of the reason why having options is so nice, right? Which is like, hey, if that breaks, the number one, and I'll tell you as a former county chair, the number one way to get people to make an excuse to not knock doors is if things don't work perfectly.
Right, exactly.
So, nothing was more infuriating for me as a chair, where you have these tools that sometimes work, and you get dozens, if not hundreds of people together, like, all right, let's go outdoors, and they get on, it doesn't work, right? And like it's like, just like Shane said, you want to cry because you did all the work to organize people, to mobilize people, and then nothing works. And so again, that's not an attack on these guys. It's really tough to run a system that has that doesn't have latency issues. Not to get too much into the details here, but those apps have historically operated off of web-based systems, which it basically, not to oversimplify it, but when you have a really big application that does a lot of stuff, like a website that does a lot of stuff, if you have too many people on it at the same time and it's slow, it slows everything down. And that's part of the reason why web-based applications are not always the best. I haven't tracked some of their developments. I've heard that they fixed some of those things, so I'm glad to hear that. I think that we've helped encourage a lot of that. But we've developed our application as a native-based application instead of HTML, instead of web-based, to avoid most of those issues. We've also done testing with hundreds of thousands. So just so you know, we have almost 500,000 users, and at any given minute, we have tens of thousands of people that are using the application at the same time in this moment. That's on par with like some of the biggest watch shows on YouTube or on Fox News, with the amount of people that we're talking about. And that's about what you should be able to expect from the user base. But at the same time, we've run all those tests to avoid it. So here's the simplified answer, which is if you're using those systems, you should be familiar with what we've developed, because that's a great backup to whatever you're using. So if you get a bunch of people together and all of a sudden your apps don't work, well, you can use this app and it'll work, or vice versa, right? And so that's a good thing. And the second thing is like, that's why I walked through. If you get used to it, you'll see we created part of the application was that button, that green button that's voters near me, you press it, that works so that it gives everybody data at the same time. Mm-hmm. And guess what? If you don't go knock those doors, it releases all that data within 24 hours. So then we don't just camp on data and waste it for the next most important weeks of the election. So there's a lot of reasons that I could get into that are way in the weeds on this stuff, but this is why us as conservatives is we need more options. We need better things, and pushing, sometimes I like a cherry Coke, and sometimes, I like a Diet Pepsi, and sometimes I like, other things, right? And if you're used to all those things, you can say, oh, well, this kind of fits this scenario. That's how we should approach our activism.
It's really weird you use that analogy, because I was thinking about Pepsi, Coke, and Dr. Pepper earlier. So yeah, it's true. We just, like I said, we need to pick a lane, 62 days, people. So
I like
everybody,
Dr. Pepper from McDonald's because McDonald's just has this taste from the fountain, right? And I
right?
don't like it necessarily from the can. It tastes different, but the McDonald's fountain, it tastes good, right? So
Right.
like it just depends on the scenario. Sometimes you're stuck with the can.
Everybody on this call is going to get an invite for a meeting next week at the same time, and it'll probably be labeled more women for Trump. But I'd still love everybody that all of the men that are on this call to join because we just want to bring a lot more women into the fold. So, Tyler, if you're not doing anything, we'd love for you to join us for a few minutes, even if we only got you for 10 minutes. But we're going to march on and fight for Michigan, and we need everybody on here to bring 10 more people to the call a week from now.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. If anyone has any questions for us, that's why Luke is here. Luke and the entire team that we have. Again, I'll just kind of make the last pitch here, and then I'll let you guys to your announcements and other things to wrap up your meeting. But tpaction.com/app, or you can just go to tpaction.com in the top right-hand corner. It'll give you the link to download the application for Android or Apple. You hit the top left-hand corner arrow and you input your information. That's what takes you to the activism tools. Play around with it, get familiar with it. We would love for you to be on there and utilize it. And hopefully it helps your activism because we've put a lot of time, love, and energy into it. For us in Michigan, we have full-time jobs that are available in CD7. You can go to tpaction.com/careers or tpaction.com/chase for more information on ballot chasing. And then last but not least, we have our Commit 100 program. So tpaction.com/100. Like I said, we are adding in there Michigan and other states. And so the more, if you have just like a random person is like, how can I get involved? Some people, again, love Trump Force 47. That's a fantastic option. Another option is just to make it simple. And sometimes it's not always about Trump, right? Sometimes it's about your school board elections. Sometimes it's about other things. And this is a way that they can get involved chasing low propensity votes for any candidate up and down the ballot. So if there's a pocket candidate for school board, tpaction.com/100 will assign 100 low propensity voters closest to them. And that you can always take those people back in order to help them chase them. Thank you again. We appreciate you guys. Thank you and God bless you for all the hard work you're doing in Michigan.
God bless you, Tyler.
We're very grateful for you because if we can pull off a massive upset in Michigan, it makes it nearly impossible for the Democrats to win.
Amen.
And it would bring me more joy than to have no pressure on me at 9 p.m. in Arizona on November 5th.
No kidding. Okay, great, Tyler. Thank you. See you around.